Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturian Society.
Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite writing podcast. I'm so hungry. I thought my stomach just was about to growl, and then it didn't. Now I'm sitting here in anticipation. So if you hear that sometime during the episode, I knew it was coming. Anyways, that one over there, who, if you're watching on YouTube, looks a little bit like a Grecian goddess because of the little hair wrap she's got going with her little curler thing. That is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis. She is one of your hosts for this episode. I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. I do not have a pretty curly thing in my hair, but I do have a bandana, which actually matches my shirt for once, which never happens. Usually it's just whatever bandana that I grab. So yeah. Anyways,
it's so funny whenever anyone compliments me on my hair. It's always like either I didn't try or like today I did, all my curls and stuff, and then I took a half of them and I was like, I'm done. I'm just too lazy to take out all the others.
It's true.
And then whenever I try really hard, it's like 0 compliments and it looks barely passable.
Exactly. Every time I make an effort, it's like nothing. The other day I woke up and Kendall stayed with me for a couple of days. For the first couple of days I was in here by myself because husband and doing army stuff per usual. So anyway, she was like, oh my God, your hair looks fabulous. And I was like, I literally washed it without soap or anything, or even conditioner. Yeah. And then I just woke up the next morning. And for some reason, that was like the magic formula for that day.
Right.
So yeah,
curly hair is fun.
Yeah. And it was our AC is broken.
Oh my gosh. Is it hot there yet?
Yesterday it was 96 degrees outside and 91 degrees inside. Ugh. So I was just sweating. And then today, and that was supposed to, thank God, everyone just pray for me, because that was the hottest day of the week in the forecast. Today was in fact, today's cool enough. I'm wearing a flannel right now. Yeah. So it's been relatively cool in here. Someone's coming out to inspect the AC unit tomorrow to see if did you hear the chicken? That was loud. Anyways,
but I believe you.
You guys might get to hear Bok Choy or one of the Tweedledees singing the song of their people. I named them.
Of those names.
Bok Choy because bark, like a chicken.
The Tweedles.
And the Tweedledees. The Tweedledees are these 2 little bantam chickens. One of them's a rooster. So because they're a little smaller than all the others. We did not buy these chickens. These are not like our chickens that we already had. They were here, and they were the family who moved out was like, do you want to keep them? We can't catch them. And I was like, yeah, we'll keep them. And so they didn't tell us they didn't tell us if they had any names yet or already. So we were like, well, we have to call them something. So
obviously
Kendall named 2 of them Jane and Elizabeth from Pride and Prejudice, which I knew immediately she was going to do that for some reason. I don't know how I knew.
Kendall.
And then it is very Kendall. And then I named one of them Dottie. And then there's the Tweedledees who don't have separate names. They go everywhere together, so it doesn't matter. And then Bok Choy, the big cowardly white rooster, he has the loudest cock-a-doodle-doo. Is like the most classic, typical, and he looks like the most typical barnyard rooster.
Nice.
Yeah, anyway, so that's Bok Choy. And then there's I think that's it, actually. That's all the chickens are. And then there's 3 guineas, which I named Turkey, Chicken, and Duck.
Nice.
It's funny.
It is funny.
And there's wow, okay, you guys, both cats, if you're watching on YouTube, I didn't realize, but both cats are sitting exactly the same way.
Oh, that was funny. What's going on?
I think they're watching the chickens.
Yeah, probably.
Anyways, so someone's coming out to look at my AC unit tomorrow to give me a very expensive piece of paper to give to my insurance company to say, look, the AC unit broke. It did not just die, it broke, and therefore should be covered under warranty because we paid extra for that. Anyways, but it's the insurance people, and they don't want to give you any money if they don't have to. And they're like, prove it. They're like, we need to prove that it broke because something broke or there was an event, not because of wear and tear in old age. And I was like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to go back in time and prove that to you.
Right. Ash, you need to invent a time machine and then take a recording of all of the things the AC unit goes through. And then you need to provide that for the insurance company. Duh,
Exactly.
That's only fair.
Exactly. It's really tricky because some guy came out and looked at it when we were getting like quotes on AC repair, because we knew that eventually this unit would have to be replaced. So before we bought it, we had someone come out and look at it, but then he just ghosted our realtor and like never like gave her the quotes. She had to get someone else on the fly. I don't even remember what they said. But that was just a quote for a replacement that the other guy gave us. He didn't tell us like the state of the AC. And so she did finally get a hold of the first guy when I was asking her like yesterday about the whole situation with the AC. And she said, I got a hold of him and he says that he remembers it turning on and functioning, which should say, if he had documented that and given us the quote, that would have saved us all of this trouble.
Yeah.
But he decided to ghost us instead because he was like, I didn't find a replacement unit that I wanted to recommend. So I just simply didn't even finish the job. So anyways, I'm a little bit pissed at that guy because I'm like, dude, now I can't prove that I can't prove that you saw that. I can't prove that you saw it turning on. And since then there was a tornado. There was a whole month of time in which the weather shifted really rapidly. So I'm like, there's a whole month in which it could have broken down, but I needed proof. I needed documented proof that it was functioning when we bought the house. Anyways, so, that's difficult. So now I don't know what the person's going to find tomorrow. I swear, if they charged me $100 to walk out, look at it and go, it's old, I'm going to punch someone. I'm going to be like, no kidding.
Yeah, could have told you that myself.
It's old. Wow. Anyway, so just pray. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that they'll be diligent and be like, oh, it broke. There was an event. Maybe the tornado did it in.
Yeah.
I don't know, because the people who lived here before didn't use their AC unit. So I don't know how they didn't.
Yeah.
Right. I guess, I don't know. I mean, it's just now got hot. So maybe they were just like, we're just going to hold off. They did a lot of strange things around the property, honestly. Like they cut through this cabinet and the cabinet, and they put their fridge in front of the window. Just some strange choices. And their choices, like none of their choices are wrong. They've just been a little strange. Yeah. Hey, and if you need any alpaca fiber, I have a whole shack full. I can't remember if I said that or not, but
wow. You know,
I tried to count today
for a while, but I haven't found a solid provider of alpaca. What did you
say?
You. Alpaca fiber?
Alpaca fiber, like their wool. Yeah. I have 80 plus bags of alpaca. Wow. And by bags, I mean full trash bags in that shed. And I need the shed. Yeah. So if writers, anyone out there, if you've been hankering to take up wool washing, carding, spinning, and weaving, boy, do I have an offer for you.
It is your lucky day.
Yep. It's like that, like the salesman like slaps the hood of the car, slaps the shed full of 80 bags of alpaca wool. Oh man. Yeah. Anyways, so it's been fun. How's your week been?
It's been good. My parents, is this recent? My parents decided to get puppies, which is so exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting.
It was so like impromptu because like my dad and I have been trying to convince my mom forever. And once my mom is in, she is in. But if she's not in, she's not in. Like she's an all or nothing kind of person in that sense. So she was finally like, yeah, okay. And then she found a breeder like the next day. And then the day after that, we went to visit. And then we picked out the puppies while we were there. So one is 4 weeks and one is 5 weeks. So we can't take them home yet. But they're so cute. And we know which ones they are. And I love them. And it's been really hard to focus on anything
You should
else.
Share the names. I totally understand. Yes. You should share their names.
Okay, so they're Bernedoodles. That's not super relevant. But so my dad is really into astronomy, and I am obviously very into books. So we were trying to find names that were both of those things. We had dogs before that were Nova and Quasar. So those are like space things. We were trying to find similar kind of things. So this the 4-week-old little like cream colored one, that's Luna, because like Luna Lovegood, and also the moon. And then the week older one, she's almost all black with a little white, and she is Aurora, like Aurora Borealis. But also fun fact, Aurora is the name of the astronomy professor in Harry Potter, so it's perfect.
Excellent. You guys excellently done, fabulously done.
It's so
we're
cool.
Also getting our puppy on Sunday. They're going to bring out Brownie. That's her name. We did not name her. That was already her name, and
she's a lab pit bull mix.
He's a lab pit bull mix, and I'm excited. I've been dreaming about dogs for months. So I'm thrilled. I cannot wait. Apparently she's just so friendly. And I'm like, I just want a dog that loves me.
So we went to visit. So we picked them out last week and then we went back to visit today actually. And already they like grew up so much in like the 5 days it's been since we saw them. So like they're running around and the little one was barking. And before Luna was like all shaking and scared, because it was the first day she'd been taken like away from her mom for any period of time. And now she was like coming up to us and like talking to us and they're so cute. And then she has a brother. So they're half sisters, even though they're a week apart, right? So they have the same dad. But Luna has like a full brother and he is the only other cream colored one. And he's like super curly and I love him and I wish I could buy him, but I can't. He's so cute. He's like the me of dogs because when we got there today, he was kind of looking at us and he's like, all right. And then he went off. The other ones were, clustered around us and wanting to play. And mom came in and we're eating. And this one is just over in his own world, like hiding in this little shed that they have. And he was just watching. He's like, nope, I'm good over here. And it was just like the introvert, antisocial puppy. And I was like, you and I are kindred souls, but unfortunately, we can only have two.
Well,
they're so cute.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my goodness. You never know. You never know. You could still end up with the U dog.
I know. And so about half of them have like been spoken for and he's one of the one that hasn't. And so the breeder was like, if you change your mind, and I'm like, can I afford to take care of a dog? Maybe I can afford to take care of a dog.
I know you're like
in my head.
I can do this. I love it. That's exciting.
But I don't know. I think there is a part of me that has had, like baby fever and like the maternal desire. And I think this is kind of covering it for now. So I'm very all in.
I definitely think my maternal desire is a big reason why I keep dreaming about dogs. Is because that feels more tangible to me than a baby, which I also want one, but I also want one in addition to a dog. Because I think I want it all. I think some people are like, well, get her a dog and then her baby fever will go away. And I'm like, no, not anymore. It won't. There's so much maternal energy here.
It's true. I mean, you have like a way to get a baby though. And because you're married and I'm not. True. So I just think part of me is like, this is good enough. We can take the dog because also I've never raised an animal. Like the dogs that I had growing up were older than me. They'd been around my whole life. Yeah. And then I actually never babysat or did anything like that in high school. So I'm like, I've never taken care of a small animal or human. So I'm like, maybe this will be good practice.
You need a dog. You need a dog. That's your dog.
I know.
I think you should. That's great. That's true. It would. I think the only reason that the dog is not going to fill my maternal need is because, like you said, I have a way by which I should be able to obtain a child. A totally legal way.
Right. You don't have to kidnap anyone.
No. Yeah. So, anyways, it's exciting. And then I think next weekend we're going to go to the feed store and we're going to get some chicks. Get some little baby chicks. I want to get some more guinea chicks too. And then in probably a couple more months, maybe a few more months, we'll get some ducks, but I need to figure out how I want to do their duck pond first in a way that's not going to make me want to die every time I have to clean it. Because cleaning the duck pond is so arduous and gross. I got to figure out a better method and then we'll go get the ducks.
Yeah.
It's also good. Yeah, it's good actually, because that'll give us time to prep the brooder for them again, because we'll have the little chicks and the guineas in there together. And then we'll have time for them to grow out of the brooder before we put the duckies in. So
nice.
I'm very excited. And then you can come out and you can play with the baby animals and you can name them. It'll be fun.
So cute.
I love having people name the animals. I don't know why. I just love seeing what people pick. And because they're like chickens, I'm like, this is not that big of a deal, but it will be something that I refer to that animal by every single day.
Yeah. So. I'm so weird in particular about names. I like overthink it potentially, but I mean, as I said, I had to like combine. Well, okay, the dogs are my parents' dogs, but they had to combine like the names to make them perfect. Yeah. But I'm a big instigator of that too. So
I am with chickens and like, so with like the fowl and I don't know. I guess it is just like not with characters, because I'm really picky about character names and I'm really, really bad at it. Maybe because there's so much pressure, but I think I'm excellent at picking animal names. And it's only because I don't care. I just will go for the first thing that makes me laugh. Like, I'm just trying to laugh here. And that's how I name every animal, is by trying to be funny.
Right.
And I'm always so satisfied. Maybe I just need to like, just relax, and maybe my characters' names will be better.
Yeah, there is a lot of pressure, especially like if you're like me, I can't change the names later on because I get so attached to them. They become that name in my head. So like there is so much pressure to get the name right on the first time.
Yeah.
So
see, I changed mine like 3 or 4 times, and it's such a hassle because then I have to like Control F and find every single one and check it, and then check it like with the possessive apostrophe and without. And I'm like,
nicknames.
Exactly. Oh, and then if you change the last name too, oh my God, it's the worst. Anyways. Well, do you have any book recs for us?
Yes. When was the last time we did this? Have I talked about Undertow yet?
No, I mean, you did on the pod, but not on the pod.
I did an episode on it, but yeah. So, I mean, that's already been out, but if you haven't noticed yet, Undertow by Michael Buckley was pretty good. It's, if anyone ever saw the TV show Star-Crossed, that was with aliens, and Undertow is basically that with mermaids.
This is exactly what I thought when I read the summary, because fun story, guys. I put out Catherine's Corner episodes, but I don't always listen to the episodes. So I just know what they're about, but then I'll go like look up the book and look up a summary to figure out like what little like tagline or whatever to write about it when we publish it. So when I was reading the summary, I was like, this is Star-Crossed. This is just Star-Crossed, but mermaids. So now I'm like, I have to buy and read this book now. I want it so bad.
Cool. Yeah. So if you guys are into mermaid things, you know, like Ash is kind of into mermaids. So if you're like that.
Do you say kind of?
Yeah.
Excuse you. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so it was a I don't know. It was not a cheesy mermaid book, if that makes sense, right? Like it didn't make me want to cringe, or it didn't feel like it was for young middle grade people. It was like a pretty interesting take on the young adult level. So,
oh, that's so exciting.
Yep.
Hell yeah. 10 out of 10 would recommend. That's exciting. Let's see. My book rec is Dubliners. For if you like short stories, or you just don't have a lot of time, but you want to read something that's that's something that's fairly comprehensive, like easily. James Joyce he's a little more down to earth than other classic authors. His short stories, especially, I think because they're short stories, didn't feel like too difficult to read. I mean, they did because I was trying to move while listening to the audiobook. Yeah. So that was difficult. But if you're like, I just want to dip my toe into some classics, James Joyce is good. I would say his greatest strength, based on, I don't really remember reading Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. I know that we did in school. I just don't really remember it very well. But at least according to Dubliners, it's really just like, wow, he really grasped the human experience. And it's so evocative. Like you read this stuff and you're like, oh my God, that is life. And it's not exactly depressing, but it's not exactly hopeful, because it's just life.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it's super good. Highly recommend. It was really good. Also James Joyce, and he's an Irish writer, and so many Irish writers. There's just this like bit of like, there's a special like humor that I only see in like classic Irish writers. Right. So it's good. It's enjoyable. So highly recommend, more so even than a lot of other classics, because it's just this one, because it's short stories. So it's an easy read. You can pick it up and put it down, and pick it up and put it down. So
cool.
Yeah.
Like on the short story topic. So when I was a freshman in high school, I remember this so vividly. We read a short story, and after reading the short story, I immediately forgot the title, but I remembered for years exactly what happens in this story. So the other day I was like, gosh, I should try to find what story that is, because I loved it so much, because, you know, short stories are fun and you can get through them faster. So I was like, maybe that would be a good way to like, you know, up my book count for the year or whatever. So I typed in like a really bad description of it, which was ballet dancers wearing masks and getting shot. And, and so I looked it up and it immediately came up, and I was like, wow, I must have never tried to find this before, because that was really easy.
Oh my God.
it's called, I'm going to mispronounce the second one, but it's Harrison Bergerson, something like that.
Interesting.
And it's by Kurt Vonnegut, which is the strangest thing to me of all time, because I don't know, the story feels very anti-socialist, and he was a socialist. And so I was like, I don't understand how he wrote this, but it is a super cool short story. So if you're in the mood for
oh my God,
a short story, I remember it so vividly. It was like the short story that made me go, wow.
So I want to read this. Wait, what was it called again?
Harrison Bergeson, I think, something like that.
Like Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah. And I've never thought I liked Kurt Vonnegut. I was expecting it to be like maybe Ray Bradbury or like, I don't know, someone more modern.
Ray. Yeah.
But it was Kurt Vonnegut, and there's nothing wrong with Vonnegut. It's just, I don't remember loving Kurt Vonnegut. So
yeah. That's so funny. Strange. Interesting.
But I do love that story. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, what's our word of the week?
Okay. Syzygy. Isn't that fun? Syzygy. It has a lot of Y's in it. It's Syzygy. So this is in theme with the dog names, because it is an alignment of celestial bodies of 3 or more. So if they're like in the sky and they line up,
Syzygy.
Mm-hmm.
Syzygy.
Yep. I was going to name one of the dogs that, but it wasn't literary related. So.
Oh, dang it. Huh. You have to like, maybe if you like turn it into a pun, like if you find like an author name or a character name that sounds like Syzygy, and then you replace it.
Maybe I was like, for a nickname, they could be Sizzle.
Sizzle. Oh my God, that's so cute. Right? This is my dog Sizzle.
Yeah.
That's so cute. I love that. Did I tell you what Javi and I are gonna, so in the future we want to get a Doberman puppy. Did I tell you what we are gonna name it?
No.
I came up with this name myself. And once again, for the win with animal names on this one, we're gonna name it Toretto. Like from Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Dominic Toretto.
Yeah.
For a Doberman. Nice. How good is that? And I
Cool.
suggested just naming him Dominic Toretto, the dog. And then Javi was like, no. Dobernick Toretto. And I was like, okay, I can get with that. And then he was like, no. Just Doberman Toretto. And I was like, I don't care. That's fine. I'm going to call him Toretto.
Yeah. As long as Toretto's in there, that's all I care
about. Toretto's in there. Well, we all know who Toretto is. So I'm extremely excited about that, because I feel like that's a great name for a Doberman. And also I love Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
So
those are fun movies.
They are. They're so fun. Exciting. Syzygy.
I don't really know when anyone would ever use that in their writing, unless they're maybe sci-fi. But there you go. Syzygy.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, okay, sci-fi writers. Here's your call to action. Find a way to use Syzygy. Work it in. Because I was thinking too, like, how can I work this in? Right. Probably, I don't think I'll ever have the opportunity to work that into conversation.
Probably not.
But boy, am I going to feel pretentious and amazing if I do find the opportunity. I'll be like, oh, it's a Syzygy. Yeah. And people will be like, a what? And I'm like, oh, just a Syzygy. Don't you know? A Syzygy. I love it.
We all know what that means. Everyone's like,
yeah. They're signing off now. Sometimes I can see the look of signing off now in people's eyes when I'm talking. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, do you want to introduce our theme for this episode?
Yes. So we are going to be talking about the dreaded writer's block. And hopefully how to maybe get past it, or not go insane with it, at least.
Yeah, seriously. It's true.
Yep. I don't know. I mean, I'll define writer's block real fast. Writer's block is when you want to write, but you can't. The words don't come. Does that seem accurate?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
The words don't come. Words, fingers, no typey.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Your like brain has ideas. And then, I mean, at least for me, it starts with my brain still has ideas, but then something in the process of transforming the ideas into language, it's just stops. And then I get flustered that I suddenly forgotten how, and then all ideas stop. And because I got myself flustered that I was forgetting how to use my words. Right. And then there's just then you have that difficulty where you're stuck in writer's block and you have to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah. And it can last hours or months.
It can literally last months. Yeah. But there might be some stuff you can do to try and get yourself out of it sooner. So very intentional stuff. Like I would say my biggest tip reading for fun,
Yes.
not for school, not because you have to do it for a podcast or a book club, but really truly just reading for fun and just like reading, just consuming as much like reading content as possible. And I used to just say like any content. And I do think keeping your imagination is active is better when it's active in general. So like movies and TV stuff, but really reading specifically, it makes the most difference. And reading stuff that you're interested in and that you like. Don't force yourself to keep reading a book that you're not into, at least when you're trying to get out of writer's block. Just set it aside, go for something that you just love, and not something even that you've read before that you love, because that's probably also not going to help that much.
So I was actually going to say, if you are stuck either with a TV show or a book series, if you feel like the writer's block is like semi-temporary, like maybe a couple hours or a couple days, rereading something I do think can help, because you kind of get yourself into that world, but you can stop whenever the inspiration comes back. So you can like stop in the middle of a
that's true,
or a paragraph, because you already know how it's going to end. You can end the episode whenever. And like your brain can still be working. So like in fantasy, like immersing yourself in a fantasy world can kind of get those juices flowing. But if it's when you already know well and you already know the ending, you can then stop. Because sometimes if I'm reading something I'm really enjoying it, I'll be like, ooh, I solved this issue in the book. I want to go right, but then I can't because I feel like I have to finish it. You don't necessarily have to do that if you're rereading. So it depends, I think, on how long it's going to last.
Definitely. If you can feel it, if you feel a short-term or a long-term writer's block coming on. Unfortunately, my writer's blocks tend to be minimum of a few weeks. My writer's block tends to be fairly long-term, which is why rereading stuff doesn't work as much for me. But I can definitely see if you're like, I want to get back to my writing right away, and I feel like I feel like this is just a very temporary block, then I could see that rereading, because you can just put it down. No commitment there. You already know how it ends. And you have to finish. Does anyone pick up something that they like and not finish it? Like,
I don't know.
What kind of sociopath can do that? Not me,
Everyone's
man.
Like, we do that. Okay, if you say so.
I don't know if I believe you guys. That doesn't sound real at all. That's funny. Well, that's my number one tip for writer's block. Do you have any other tip for writer's block? I mean, I have other like tinier ones, but that's my big one.
I guess so. I just think the solution depends on if it's going to be short or long term. So like for short term writer's block, I think a big thing, it's going to sound obvious, but like get up and leave the computer and go like do chores or eat or, go see people, because sometimes you'll be staring at the screen for a really long time. You're like, I have to finish this, but you have a block. It's okay to like get up and just go walk around or, do something different. And the advice I hear a lot that doesn't work for me, but I can connect it to this, is that if you're having writer's block, you should change your location. So if you're, writing in your room, I write in my room, go to another part of the house or apartment, or go out to a library or a cafe. And I've never found that this works for me, but if it does work, I think it's probably because in the process of moving, like even if it's just to another room, you're temporarily out of the story, right? So you have to walk downstairs or upstairs or to another room, or you have to drive to the library or a cafe or something. And I think just the simple act of doing something mindless, like driving or walking, can help you to get past that. So if it's short term, that's something I think could help.
That's true. I've never noticed like the changing locations has really helped, but just for me going outside, even if I just go stand outside or just go pace around outside for a little while, that can really help with some just like day of writer's block. Like if I'm just like stuck on like a scene or a chapter, and it's not like I don't typically consider that writer's block, because what I consider my writer's block is like the really awful long-term writer's block. But when I get those like little moments of writer's block, that's what works for me, is to just go outside. I don't know if it's like the sun in your eyes and the fresh air. It's like you're being assaulted by your actual environment, not the fantasy environment that you were writing about. So like you were saying, it very forcibly removes you from the world, which you kind of need sometimes. And then I guess I have occasionally, like if I've had to go like be at a coffee shop or something. And I've occasionally that's worked for jockeying me into writing more. I think because in that scenario, the opposite, like on the way to the coffee shop or whatever, you are out of the environment and then you get there and you do not want to interact with anybody. So then you force yourself to go back in. Like you are forced to, otherwise you have to interact. And so that's like worked well for me.
Yeah, it's like a spectrum. So like if you need to write but you don't want to, then you find yourself doing chores. But the thing you definitely don't want to do is have to interact with people. So if you force yourself into a situation where you don't have to do any chores and there are a bunch of people around, the writing will magically come.
It really does. That for me, that happens all the time. And also I'm a huge procrastinator for writing, but not for other things. Like I will prioritize everything else. I'll be like, but I need to move the fridge and sweep underneath it. I've really been meaning to do that. So obviously that's more important than getting to my writing today. And I mean, that is what I do when I have writer's block, which is part of why my writer's block will go on so long. I will just take care of all of this little practical stuff instead of A, just trying to sit down and write again, or B, trying to take intentional steps towards getting out of my writer's block, which like for me, I read like 6 books the other week and half of them were just books that I really wanted to read. And I felt for the first time in a long time, like my imagination was really just going. And then now we were going through the whole move, which I will say in the middle of a move is not the greatest time to try and get back into writing because there's no time. But my goal is once things are a little more settled, hopefully in like literally like another week or so, that I can get back to I know there'll always be like 100,000 projects to do around here, but I'm going to try and get back to like reading some more stuff for fun because I really felt my brain like re-engage. So,
and that's one of the reasons that people say in order to be a good writer, you should read a lot. And it's not just, knowing the market and all that kind of stuff. It's all because it does just help you get over stuff like writer's block.
It does. So. It helps you and you absorb the skill of like whatever you're reading, like whatever was poured into it. Like obviously not every skill, but I would say every book that you come away from that you connected with, you absorb something from that can help you as a writer. Even if it's not conscious, I think it's rarely conscious, but you definitely
that's
absorb
like
something.
Probably why it helps. Yeah. You subconsciously are, I don't know, just thrown into not just the, grammar and the style, but also the story. And so then that just gets you thinking. So,
absolutely. Yeah, it's good. I think another thing that here's 2 other strategies that I've used before. And I also actually, one of these I also use for anxiety and it really helps. But so one of them is stream of consciousness observations. So like if you're sitting outside, or this really works, especially if you're in a public place, it's something you can do that's active with your mind. It's not reading necessarily, but just like typing absolutely everything as you perceive it. So you're definitely really not looking at the screen because it doesn't really matter what you're writing or if there's typos. You're just like, someone walked in, there was a gust of wind, the wind smelled like, etc. Whatever it is you're experiencing in that moment, you're just typing. Some of that's great because you might find like something. I often find that I found like some weird new way to describe some sensation because I'm not usually experiencing sensations as I'm trying to write them into a story. So you come across that a lot, which is nice. And that can kind of make you feel inspired that you're like, hey, I'm not a bad writer, which can be inspiring, but also it just like gets your brain going. If you have a hard time getting your brain going sometimes, or if you're just bored and you have a second, it's just a great exercise to do. So you can do it on a computer or, you can also do this in a journal. And I do that more for anxiety. And it's not just stream of consciousness, but it's kind of stream of consciousness. Like it's a little bit more, it's journaling. It's a little bit more structured, I guess, than just a stream of consciousness. But writing in a journal or something like at least once a day or once even every other day, it can be really helpful. I think for writer's block and also for processing feelings. Because if you are a writer or a creator and you're not creating, there's a good chance that you're having some feelings that are not being dealt with because that's how most of us channel our emotions. Right. So journaling is a great way to get into that like creating headspace and like kind of relieve some of the pressure even when you have writer's block or you feel like you don't have time to do the creating. So in that sense, it can kind of take off some of the pressure so that it doesn't feel like this big, horrible thing that you haven't written in a while. And sometimes the sheer pressure is what keeps me from writing. So journaling is just a really block. Exactly. So journaling is just a really great way to just like open the kettle a little, just relieve some of the pressure, just let some
Yeah.
of the air out, and then you don't ever explode. You just feel like, okay, I can manage until I have time to write again. I'm not a horrible person or a horrible writer. And then bonus, you're typically writing about stuff that you're feeling. So that helps to process things too. But I think that journaling every day is it's just really great for not feeling like shit about yourself as a creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do when I'm having writer's block, especially if you're toward the beginning of a new project, is just it's okay to take time away from it. Like if it's only going to be a couple days, it is absolutely okay to just let yourself be in writer's block and not try. But in that meantime, because I always feel like if I take too many days or steps away or whatever, I'll lose my trains of thought and I'll get out of the world, and it'll be worse to try to get back in. So
I do that.
Yeah. So to remain productive, I usually will take like a physical journal or pad of paper or something, and I will sit down and I will think about something in the story that I know I'm going to need later that I haven't figured out yet. So for instance, in the book I'm working on now, I'm kind of in writer's block about it. And I know that it's a fantasy. And so there are going to be a bunch of magical items that are getting stolen throughout. And they're not like super relevant to the story. So it's not something that I came up with already, but I need like a long list of stuff to pick from just to kind of immerse readers in the world. So I sat down, I put on a TV show, and I just started coming up with random magical items. Nice. And so I remained in the world and I was still thinking about it, but I didn't have to, sit and stare at a blank screen. And then in the process, just some of the stuff that came out of my head solved certain plot holes or solved certain blocks that I had on certain scenes. And so if you just let yourself create like a list, I don't know, I like lists.
I do
create
too.
Something in list form or start describing things that are going to happen later. I know some people write out of chronological order, which I can't do. If you can, that's a great tool, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of write things that you're going to need later, but you're not writing them as though they're a scene, you're just kind of preparing yourself so that you can fill in stuff that's going to come later, or maybe stuff that happened before. That can be a good way to get past the writer's block, because you stay in the world while still giving your brain a break from the specific story.
That's super true. Yeah. If you feel like if you take a break, you're going to have a hard time getting back into it, that is a great way to do it. You can do like a lot of like world building stuff. So you can do like language stuff, map stuff. You can do like
come up with
character background stuff, last name. Yeah, exactly. Like just do all of the little, you can take that time to literally sit in front of the TV, because it's stuff that's pretty low pressure, and just kind of like brainstorm and write down like stuff when it hits you, stuff that may never come up, but it might, but now you have it and you've done the background work. And background work, you could do it for, years. It never hurts. Get off the counter, Flora. My cat. Anyways, it never hurts to have more, because it only makes you sound more confident in your writing when you get back to writing. And you might actually be really grateful that you did it. And kind of on that note, like if you're feeling stuck on writing, but you don't want to put down the project because you feel like you might not be able to get back to it or not get back to it for a long time, most of us creative types have a couple different mediums that we like to work with. It's not usually just one medium. So maybe turn to your other mediums or a new one that you've wanted to try and see how you can play with your story in that way. Like if you're an artist, like a visual artist, can you draw a character or draw a potential book cover, even if it's, just for you and you'll never use that one, it doesn't really matter. You can get creative when you draw your maps. My maps look like garbage. Maybe someone out there can draw a really cool looking map, or maybe you want to like make one out of like stained parchment or whatever. Maybe if you sew, you want to like sew like a costume or something, or make a piece of jewelry like what the one that your character wears in the book or something. Like that kind of stuff that's still creative but not writing, but is still directly about your story, I think is a great way to like exercise your imagination, break free of the writer's block, but not get outside of the world.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I like to do is, I'm not good at it, but I kind of like calligraphy. And so I really think just the act of physically writing with your hand can help sometimes too. So if I take the calligraphy pen and I start to write out names or, certain quotes that I like, or location names or whatever, even just that can sometimes help. Another thing related to that is that I've heard when editing, if you change the font, that can sometimes help your brain see things differently.
Yeah.
So that could potentially help with writer's block too. Write in a different font and see if that'll kind of help new ideas come. It'll feel maybe like a different project, even if it's not.
Yeah.
So like just the act of writing mindless things even, I think can sometimes be a help there. So
I totally agree. I think kind of similarly, like the changing the font, which, wow, that makes, I wish I had done that, known that when I was editing, I would have totally helped. That totally makes sense.
yeah.
You can turn on your text to speech and then do not look at your computer while you're doing it, because it will defeat the purpose. You'll just read it anyways, because we all read faster than we hear. But like, turn on text to speech, put your computer aside, lay back, and just listen to your story as if it's being read to you. That's a way, if you're like, I don't want to put down the computer, I want to muscle through. That might be a more effective way to quote unquote muscle through, without putting your computer away entirely, than just sitting there and banging your head against the desk for hours because you don't have any more letters to put on the page.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, just a brief thing back on what you said, reading to get past it. If you are a person that has an already completed book, it is also possible that rereading stuff that you have written before can help.
100%.
And maybe even in like the Word document format, instead of, I don't know, if you like self-publish or you're published, if you have the book in your hands, like maybe go to document. But I know that I do that a lot, and then I always get really excited about it because it's something I've written, and I can transfer that usually to something else. So.
It's both inspiring because you reread the stuff that you obviously liked, or even if you have like critiques of your own work, you're like, hey, I really still like this scene, or I like this thing about it. And also it really, like, honestly, the more that you read your own stuff, we should all be rereading our own stuff, because it's really helping to solidify your voice as a writer, which is like the most important thing that any writer has, is their voice.
Yeah.
It's what makes people like you no matter what series you're writing in, is because they recognize the voice there. So it's always good to keep developing and honing and defining your voice. And I think, like you said, like going back and rereading your stuff is a great way to do that. It'll automatically help you define like what your tone is, not your tone, but what your voice is. So what your style is and what people are going to like about it. So you'll carry that into when you're working on your new project, but also you'll be inspired by either the concepts or the approach you took, or even like the type of language you used in the last book, because if you wrote it because you liked it. So
and you may have forgotten how you did it, and maybe you'll come across certain dialogue scenes or descriptions and you're like, man, I'm really good at this. That was pretty good. Yeah.
Exactly. That scene that you're working on in your new book that you are stuck on and you can't get past, or that sentence you just can't work, you might have already solved that equation in your last book. I mean, very often when it's writer's block, it's something that you have actually already mastered this problem you're dealing with, whatever it may be, but your brain it's tired. It needs a break. Whatever, who knows? We're humans and our brains do strange things. There's a good chance that you've already either dealt with it and found a way around it for now, or that you dealt with it and you figured it out. So that's a great reason to go back and read your stuff. And it's also, I mean, being excited about your writing is like the number one most powerful tool for getting out of writer's block. And then that plus having time to write. So,
for sure. So also, if you're working on something, particularly if it's very new, like not like a book 3 in a series, but something new to you, like I said, I can't write out of chronological order, but if you take a scene that is never ever going to make it into the book, maybe it's, just fluff, or maybe it's in the background and it's not something that's important to the story. If you can sit down and write that, because it's not going to matter because you don't need it for the final version. Sitting down and writing that can sometimes help because there's not the pressure, but you just kind of like a stream of consciousness thing. You just write it out. Like, how would this character have reacted when, I don't know, when this fight happened, or when they overheard this happening, or, silly stuff. It doesn't even have to be important. It can be like a normal day at their school or something like that, just to kind of maybe get to know the characters. So, because I have heard a lot that sometimes if you hit writer's block, it is because there is a problem earlier in the manuscript. And this is, no one likes this, but I do think this is usually true if it's going to last a while. If you hit, the midpoint and you're like, now I don't know what to do, it's because the problem is earlier. And so if you can just do like a character study, or think further about who they are and where you want the plot to go, anything that kind of solves those questions. You might have to go back and edit. Some people might just push through and change it later, but you can go back and edit that. And for me, once I fix a problem earlier in the manuscript, it becomes much easier to
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From the point where I had the block.
This is why my writer's block is typically, this is almost how every book I've ever written starts. This is how the whole process goes. I write the first like 5 chapters, and then I hit writer's block because the first 5 chapters of a book are so important. And if you make one little mistake, it can like screw with your story the rest of the way through. Yeah. So like around 5 chapters in, I hit really hard writer's block. And then I just keep having to go back to the beginning and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit, not for the perfectionist, because that's a different type of editing I have to do later. Do not edit for perfection, but I keep going back and re-editing until I smooth out whatever it was that was catching me up before. And then I suddenly find, I don't even always know what it is that I fixed, but I've changed the thing, whether I knew I was changing it or not. I have changed the problem, and now I can move forward again. And typically when I get to like maybe right before the halfway point, from there on out, the rest of the book is usually a cinch, because at that point, pretty much everything that you're going to have to like have a callback to in your book should be set up by like the first third, pretty much. So, I mean, at least in my situation, that is usually true. So once I get past that first third of the book, which is the hardest part, then it's just like easy. I mean, comparatively easy. It's if I have writer's block after that, it's for like a day. But my writer's block in any area of the first third of the book is intense and long lasting. And the only way that I can make myself push through is by rereading it. Although now I'm really liking your idea of going back and rereading something else I wrote, because I feel like that would be more effective in the scenario that I just want to push through and keep myself writing, instead of taking a break and then never getting back to it, which I do, not because I'm not determined, because I certainly am, but because I have 100,000 things to do. And now I live on a farm with even more things to do, because I was like, you know what? My life doesn't have enough of chores. I should have more of those. So,
but I mean, the more chores you have, the more you can think about writing, and maybe you'll be more prepared by the time you actually sit down. So
it's true. I just need to also be more, I think, and here's the thing that none of us are going to like. And I'm going to be really careful with this advice because it's not always applicable, and I tend to apply it to myself in the worst of times. There is a certain mental discipline to overcoming writer's block. That is in no way to say that it's always that. And so definitely not to shame people who have writer's block and feel like they just can't get past it. It's not always because you're just not disciplined enough. I've also have tried diligently to get out of writer's block and still struggle to get out of it. It just depends. But those of us, and I even think right now, I would be a little bit hard on myself to say that right now I'm not being mentally disciplined about it. I could be more mentally disciplined to try and focus on my work than I have been lately. But I don't think I've been entirely undisciplined. I really have had so much going on lately that I simply cannot burn myself out entirely. So always try and be balanced with yourself when you're thinking about that. But when you have writer's block, it may help to take a second to think, okay, am I really that busy? Am I really that distracted? Or I just don't want to do it right now. I'm just not being disciplined. I'm just not prioritizing. Sometimes it's about prioritizing. Very often it's about prioritizing. So just checking in with yourself when you have writer's block, or if you've had writer's block for more than a couple of days, like, is this a self-discipline thing? Or is this a life is in the way thing? Or is this a lack of inspiration thing? Mine often starts with a lack of inspiration, and then it's a lack of mental discipline. And then by the time that I want to get back into it and I've got the drive, then of course life is like, and you're moving and you have to fix everything. Your house is falling down. And I'm like, well, now I legitimately have a very good reason to be too busy to really focus on my writing. But I could be a little more disciplined than I'm being right now. Like, I could do more of my journaling work. I could do more just like actively thinking about the book. Like I could definitely take some time to reread some stuff that I've written.
I think no one wants to hear it, but something to consider is that if you're having writer's block, maybe you just need to get over it. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but sometimes the answer is just sit down and force yourself to write.
And know that you're going to go back and delete everything that you wrote.
Well, and I was going to say, that's why I think sometimes it's good to write scenes that you know you won't need, because then you don't have to go back and feel like you have to, you know, fix garbage or throw it out. But whether you write it in your document and it's part of the story, or if it's an extra thing, you kind of just have to force your way through it. It is going to go away eventually, unless there are severe problems with the story that you're going to have to go back and fix. But if it's fine, the writer's block is going to go away. And if you are on some kind of a deadline, or if you just really want to do it and get it done and you're excited about it, pushing through and just kind of saying, I have writer's block, but I'm not going to let that stop me, is sometimes the answer.
Yeah, I would say at least in my case, whenever my writer's block has been caused either largely or entirely to a lack of mental discipline, the only way that I've gotten through it is to sit down and force myself to write. And I'm not good at writing not even out of sequence, but out of the events that I know happen in my story. So I have to just keep writing. And I always go back and completely rewrite that whole section, but at least it got me through. It's kind of like putting a patch over like a gaping hole, where you're like, listen, no one's going to fall through it right now. I do have to go back and fill it in, but no one's going to fall through it, even if I have to go back and rip out the whole portion and fix it again. And I think that is specifically a really good strategy when your problem is a lack of mental discipline. Because it happens to all of us. My caution is, if you are someone who puts a lot of pressure on yourself and you're someone who overworks themselves, don't jump to that as your first thing.
Yeah, it depends. You can know who you are as a writer.
Yeah, know who you are as a writer. And I think some people know that their problem is procrastination. And if your problem is procrastination, and it's not due to like a very pressing like lack of time or lack of whatever, then maybe the issue is you could use more mental discipline. And in that case, there is no solution other than making yourself do the damn thing.
Yeah.
You have
to.
Sit down,
force yourself to do it.
It's never going to get easier.
Yeah.
It might get harder. It'll never get easier. So
a little bit of hope for you today.
Yeah.
It might get worse, but it won't get better.
It might get worse, but it's not going to get better. Oh my God. My husband just sent me a picture of crawfish bread. That's what he's having right now.
Yum.
It's got cheese all over it. Oh, sad day. Oh my goodness. I had leftover tuna fish.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah. Anyways.
Okay. So my last kind of major advice is super weird. And I just want to acknowledge that it's super weird. I do this thing, and I don't know if Ash knows this or remembers this or whatever. I still have like an old iPod, like from, I don't know, 2009 or whatever. And I will, if I'm having writer's block, or even if I'm just,
I remember the iPod. Yeah. I totally remember your iPod.
I will put the headphones in, I'll put on my iPod, and I will pace my room. And I just let myself, with the music like super loud, like imagine the scenes that are going to go down. And I know everyone does, we all like daydream our scenes, but I don't know if it's normal to do this to music while you're physically moving. So that's what I do. And I do this for many reasons. One is because it is exercise. And sometimes as writers, we can be prone to not do that. And so it forces you. Yeah. And the exercise, gets your creative juices flowing too.
Yeah. So some people say for inspiration or writer's block, like go on a run. Yes. I'm not going to do that. Not because of discipline, but because I'll die. But I'll go walk around some, sure.
Yeah. And also because the music creates like, if you listen to the right music and it's like in vibe with your book, that alone, just like immersing yourself in it can really help. I don't know if anyone remembers the TV show Cyber Chase. Do you remember that? It was on PBS and it taught you about math.
I love Cyber Chase.
My favorite show. There's like a motherboard and they have to defeat hacker and all this stuff. I don't know if any of you know what we're talking about, but
oh my God, Cyber Chase.
One of them. Is it Jackie? Was Jackie her name? Whenever there was a problem to solve, she would say, everyone get out of my way. I got a pace. And I think I just internalized that. And some part of me just feels like whenever there is a problem, small or large, I have to pace to figure it out now, which is weird because I didn't do this in school. Like I don't do this for math problems. I didn't do this for anything except for writing. And I will just pace my room for hours at a time if I have to, imagining the scenes. And sometimes I'll imagine the scene and I'm like, great, do it again. And I'll go through the exact same scene to the same music to like work out the details. And sometimes it'll just be silly stuff. And I don't know, the characters will just sing songs for no reason. And that's not going in the book, but it helps me get to know them. And like sometimes if the songs are like a good representation of what they're feeling or whatever, that can help. And sometimes I'll go through a scene and I'm like, nope, hitting a block there, that's not the direction to go. And I can go with a different direction. So just a weird piece of advice, pace your room with some music on.
Interesting.
And it is possible that that will help. And I do think that this is why I very rarely get writer's block. I am really able to start a project and finish it within usually 2 months or less. It's not even because I'm a particularly fast writer. I mean, sometimes I am, but I do think it's just because I don't get a lot of writer's block once I've started. And usually when I get writer's block, it only lasts for a couple days. And so the kind of little tips I've given you will fix it. But I do think that I do this before, I do this in the middle, I do this after, I do this all the time. I'm still doing this with a series that is already written. There's nothing new that I can add to it. But I still do this because it keeps me connected to the characters. And it doesn't seem productive, but it is, because you are staying in the world and you're fixing plot holes, even if you don't think that you are, and coming up with little details. So that's my advice. If anyone wants kind of a weird, obscure way to fix writer's block, there you go. You don't have to do it with an iPod, but you can do it with any kind of music. But that's what I do.
I think that you might have literally just, I think that if I combine your advice with something that I've had the instinct to do, but has never worked for me, I think that this is the reason that this works for you. I have often tried to, so if you like to like score your book, right? So you like pick, music that you're like, this would be the soundtrack in the movie. So sometimes I'll do that and I'll play that music while I'm trying to write. But I think that it's a little too distracting to do while I'm writing. I think the key is I should be playing that while I'm pacing, and my only job is to pace and listen to the music and think about the specific scene. I think sometimes trying to think about the scene while you're sitting down staring at your computer, I actually think that can just like cause your brain to freeze up. And if I try and do that with my music going, for some reason, it really doesn't work. But something about what you're describing, where like you're just pacing instead of sitting at your computer. So your job is not in the moment. Your job is not to write. Your job is to imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you imagine
you come up with a good line, take a break, write it down, and then just go back to it. And I'll come up with a really good line. I'm like, yeah, that's a really great line. I'm gonna write that down. And then you go back to it. And like you were saying, where writing to music can be hard, particularly if it has lyrics, which is why I've gotten into the habit of writing to music without lyrics. But if there are lyrics, and sometimes that's just the best song. If you do the pacing thing, you can fast forward through stuff and you can hit certain points in the scene at a certain point in the song. And so like, the moment that the key changes or whatever, some big thing happens and it just feels very epic. But when you're writing, you can't guarantee that you're going to write at that speed and get to the right scene at the right point in the song. You can do that if you pace. And so you don't have to listen to it as you're writing it necessarily. It can just be on your mind that like, oh, and these are the beats that are going to happen. And I don't know how long it'll take me to write them, but that's kind of how the chronology of events is going to go. So that's helpful too.
That's true. This is so interesting. I think that for so many of us who have been writing for a long time, we equate imagining and creating with writing, but those are all completely different processes. And what you're describing is like this like really interesting separation of imagining and creating and then writing. And I mean, I definitely used to do this as a kid. I think that this is probably where we all start. And somewhere along the way, we get so focused on the action of writing the story that we don't take the time to separately imagine it away from the computer with the things that inspire us, which is for many of us like music and soundtrack and stuff. And I definitely, if I write with music, it has to be music without lyrics at all. I can't do it. It's too distracting. But that's so. See, now I'm all excited because I'm like, now I want to give that a shot and see what happens.
It is kind of embarrassing. Like, it's a weird thing for someone to like a roommate or something to walk in on you doing, because it just seems really weird. And sometimes I get really into it and I pace faster, and then I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. So be aware that maybe you should do it when like you're alone. But other than that,
I never thought it was weird of you.
Oh, good.
I mean, maybe I'm not the person to judge.
I know. It's like, do Ash and Marianne just think I'm super weird? Which, is probably a guess, but maybe not for that reason. So
I would sing songs in Gaelic in the room and
That's
everyone
true.
could hear me, which is significantly more embarrassing than pacing. So maybe I'm not the person to ask, but
Yeah.
who cares? The cost of creating artwork.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna look kind of weird to people, but
Mhm.
I've gotten, so I think I've been doing this since middle school, so I am
Mhm.
sort of at a point where I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
But
Honestly, that's the best place to be. The place
yeah,
where you just don't care anymore.
yep. So
Well, do you have anything else you want to say about writer's block?
I don't think so. Do you?
No, I think we covered. See, now I'm all excited. My new writer's
Good.
block strategy is to listen to this episode and do
Yeah.
the things in it.
Write down all the things, try all of them in a row.
Exactly. Exactly. Guys, take notes. Actually, I do take notes on the pod. I largely take notes on stuff that Karissa says. So,
Well, you don't really need to take notes on what you say because you already know it. So that makes
no,
sense.
my brain is like, duh, we're so right. And then my brain is often like, we're so good at everything more than everybody else. And then Karissa says something. And honestly, as a writer, she's definitely exceeded me. And so I'm like, oh my God, there's stuff that I didn't know. So I take notes on it. Yeah. Anyways, on that note, how's your writing been going?
It's been a writer's block kind of week, but I will say it is because of the puppies. And I am so excited about the puppies that it's hard for me to do anything else. It's not really that the story is a problem at this point. It's just, I'm really bad. I know some people do things like writing sprints and, just 10 minutes of writing a day is enough. I can't do that. I have to set aside. Yeah, I have to set aside chunks of time. So if I have anything less than like 2-3 hours at minimum, I can't do it because it just seems pointless to get into the groove at that point.
100%. I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
They're like, it keeps you in the habit. And I'm like, honestly, it makes me mad and makes me not want to do it more.
Yeah, because either I can't think of anything to write and I'm frustrated with myself, or I'm on a roll and then I have to stop. And I hate that.
There's either way, there's so much pressure, and pressure is like the enemy for most of us. So I'm not about that life.
I mean, if writing sprints work for you guys, go for them, but they do not work for me.
I would like some, hey, if writing sprints work for you, I legitimately do want to hear from you. I want to understand why and how in case I'm just doing it wrong. I'm just doing it wrong. Yeah, teach me how to do a writer's sprint. The only kind of sprint that I want to do ever.
Exactly. So yeah, I definitely feel like I'm in a good place in the book. I think I haven't gotten farther. So I think I'm still like 70 pages in, which I said last week. And I know I have like a really rough outline of like, then they go to this place and do this. It's not like a neat outline, but I basically know it's going to happen. I just have to, the puppies are not going to be here for another 2-3 weeks. So my goal is kind of can I crank this book out in 2 weeks and just get it done? And then I can focus on that and then focus on the puppies and just segment my life that way. I think it's possible.
You can. I wrote a book in 9 days, so I know you can. Haven't you? You excelled past that too, didn't you?
I did it in 6 days with the.
So you can totally do it.
I know. So I'm like, if I just mentally prepare myself that you're going to do nothing but write for the next 2 weeks, I think I can totally do it.
You can totally
I just need to get out of the puppy mode. And then I can go back into it once it's done.
Exactly. So, you're like, my reward is puppy mode. Exactly. It's full on puppy mode. That's an excellent reward. Oh, I love it.
So that's my plan. What about you? How's your writing?
Well, I moved.
Yeah. So nothing.
So nothing. And then there's so many repairs, like our floor is falling in because there was a leak that happened after the sellers left before we moved in. So it was just leaking the whole time. So now I had to have someone come out today and be like, it's going to be this giant chunk of money to cut through the floor and replace it. And I'm like, excellent. Actually, we are lucky. We are really blessed in the fact that this is not specifically writing related, but we had budgeted a certain amount of money for repairs based on the home inspection and the stuff we knew we'd have to fix. And then I ended up getting a quote for roof repairs that was like $2,500 less than I had budgeted for, which I was really hoping would happen. So actually the floor repairs put us just directly back in budget. So it was actually a blessing, but an excellent if that didn't happen, that unexpected repair, since we also have to replace the AC unit. But anyways, so that's great. But anyways, all of this stuff is occupying my brain space. So I'm constantly thinking about all of the repairs that we have to do. And then all the stuff that I need to do to the inside of the house to make it honestly like okay for people to see it. Like, it's not bad, but like it looks rough. It looks like very old. It is very old. And I want to like paint the walls, and I want to paint the trim, and I want to replace the carpet, which is not big project stuff, but I can't get to it until I'm done with all of the repairs because it's not as high as a priority. And so then I'm like, and then the book is the priority after that, which sounds like my priorities are not in the right place. But genuinely, those are the things that my brain feels has to happen, and so that it can be calm.
Yeah.
So my brain is unhappy. But I think after this episode, I'm trying to think of what I can do until then, because I'm tired of being in writer's block. And I know that at this point, the longer I'm not writing, the worse it's getting, because I'm getting farther and farther from my book. But because I am in this place where there are other things that just have to be a higher priority, like we have to get the electricity fixed. I'm afraid the house is going to catch fire and burn down. Like, there's stuff that has to happen. And I cannot seem to get it out of my brain space enough that I could actually like sit down and write. I also don't have that much time because I also work full time. So I think what I'm going to do after this discussion of our, like in this episode, I think I'm going to go back and read some of my old stuff, because I can pick it up and put it down, and I don't have to finish the whole thing because I know what's happening. So it's not like a big time commitment. And I think I'm going to try and do more of like, maybe I'll pace around if I have a few minutes. Maybe I'll like take like a 10-minute break from work and just turn on some music and just pace around and think about the book. I'm just going to try and be more in that headspace. And maybe if I just, as I'm trying to get all of these big life practical things that have to get done before I can commit at my time, my big chunks of time back to writing, maybe until then, my goal is to just get myself every day more and more back into the headspace of writing and of that story specifically. So then by the time I'm not having to dedicate all of my free time to making the house not fall down, then I will be ready to just sit down and just go.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. This is my plan.
Yes. Have you done anything with your like writing space, your office / writing
No,
space?
and see, this is part of what's all going to have to happen in the same amount of time it's going to take me to get all the repairs and stuff done and get the walls all fixed and the carpet and stuff. I think my office is going to also be Hobby's game room. So I haven't figured out where I'm going to put my stuff, because I actually don't have a desk, because my desk before was attached to the kitchen counter, which we didn't take the kitchen counter because it belonged to the apartment complex.
Weird. You should have taken it.
I know. I should have. That was my lack of forethought. So I don't actually have a desk. So that's why I'm currently working at this table. I mean, during the day I can work at Hobby's desk, but like my writing hours are typically his gaming hours. So that's not going to work. But I also don't feel like I get to spend a ton of time with him because him being in the army and him being gone so much. So a big problem too that's kept me from writing, I don't know if anyone else has had this, if you have like a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend that tends to be away a lot, or your time is limited together, it's hard to justify writing because often it means being in a separate space from where they are. And you're like, I want to take this time to spend with them. And so I'm excited to have my desk in the game room, because I think that when I figure out how I'm going to put my desk in there, I think that I'll feel like I'm still spending time with him, even when I'm writing, instead of having to go be in a separate room because there's no space for me. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. So I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it yet, because that's the one room that I have. I mean, I think I unpacked a box. So you can barely get into the room because we have so much game room junk because we're nerds. And so all of our nerd shit is in there.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to drag all of Hobby's army stuff, but I think I'm going to drag that out to the garage. He said that I could. There's so many things I want to prioritize. Like if I could just get like some really big plastic trunks that are like totally waterproof, I could just throw all of Hobby's army stuff in there, stick it in the garage, and not even like bat an eye. I would just be like, that's where it belongs. Now putting a bunch of cardboard boxes in the garage, it just feels like something's going to happen. They're going to like mildew. There's going to be spiders in them.
Flood.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so that's another thing I need to prioritize that, I think, because that will allow me to prioritize my writing space. That's what's in really the army stuff is where my stuff should be. He has so much army, like uniforms, equipment. Why is there so much of it? It's like boxes upon boxes. He has like as much of it as I have of books. That's how much space it takes up, which Kendall, lovely woman that she is, she set up my bookshelf for me, which is really nice. I still have like 6 boxes of books that I don't know where I'm going to put, but it looks so nice. She did such a fabulous job. Anyways, that's my writing update and also my life update because they are just fully intertwined for me.
Can't talk about one without talking about the other.
I can't, no, because then I'm like, whoa, why am I not doing writing? Because life. And then I'm like, why life? Because writing. Yeah. Anyways, see, do we have anything else that we want to talk about writing or about writer's block or anything?
So. No.
Okay. Sweet. Well, in that case, if you guys want to keep up with us during the week, if we are just one episode a week is just not enough for you, we understand. Don't worry. We absolutely understand the feeling if there not being enough of us. You can also listen to Catherine's episodes. If you guys are new here, Catherine is Karissa's alter ego. She's a little scary. So she hosts Catherine's Corner, in which Catherine goes over different books and what makes them great or not so great from a writer's perspective, which is just really kind of getting into what we're saying about when you read new books, you get new stuff out of it. That's really... This is just her doing exactly that.
Being very purposeful about it.
Very, very purposeful about it. So versus osmosis with intentionality doing that. But so you guys can listen to those. They come out every Monday, I believe. I should know since I edited and published them. I think that's Mondays.
Right.
Yeah. And until then, you guys can also follow us on social media. We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram. We are the Scripturian Society. On TikTok, we've got funny videos. On Instagram, we've got just like all kinds of encouraging like writer tips, tricks, some funny stuff on there too. I've said it before. I'll say it 100 billion times. I'll die on this hill. Instagram, whether you're like in it for funny videos or not, our Instagram is such a good place to be as a writer because I keep seeing stuff on there and then I'm like, now I'm inspired. So Karissa's like, she's rocking it on there. So if you guys if you have writer's block, actually maybe following our Instagram might help a little because it helps me because Karissa's so good at condensing little tips and stuff from our episodes in there. So if you miss an episode too, don't worry because she's going to throw the best bullet points up on Instagram. If you guys want to join our writers group, it is completely free to do so. You can just go to Patreon and look at Story Siren Studio. That is our production company. So if you look up Story Siren Studio, you'll find us. It's free to join the writers group. Like I said, you can just start commenting, just start chatting, whatever it is you're working on. If you want to talk about writer's block, if you want to talk about sprint writing and why it works for you, go for it. Or if you just want to DM us about that, because I am very curious if and how this works for people. You can do so. You can do so there for free. If you want to support the pod, you can go to storysirenstudio.com and check out our merch because we've got tank tops for summertime now. So hell yes. And some other really cool stuff. So go check it out. Everybody stay hydrated, get some fresh air, take a break from the computer, play some music, pace around, scare your family.
Exactly.
All of the good things. I think that's all we got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.